A good friend of mine reached out to me and was like, "Hey, white jokes are not sufficient. You know, there's an elephant in the room when you cover gospel music. You have to be able to address race." And I was like, "Well, how do I do that? Because it's not like I can talk about it." So his proposal, and I respect this friend. He comes from a really good place, and he's always, you know, is I've known him for a long time. It's not. It wasn't like a dramatic affair or attention or anything like that. It was just like, hey, this could be done better. Um, and so his suggestion was document my learning about it. So that figures. And then we open it up for questions. So I'm not here to like talk about my opinion because no one cares. No one should care about racism and gospel music from my perspective. No one should care about that. So, as a way of doing this, we're going to be listening to James Cone, and we're going to be learning about Black liberation theology. Also, hello, Tink. How you doing? I hope I didn't betray you with my Mariah versus Beyonce video. Hmm?
This is Fresh Air. I'm Terry Gross. In the coverage of the controversy surrounding
James
Barack
Cone.
Obama's former pastor, James Wright, you've probably heard references to Black liberation theology. Dr. Wright says the vision statement of his church, Trinity United Church of Christ, is based upon this theology that started with the 1969 publication of James Cone's book, Black Power and Black Theology. We wanted to get a better sense of what Black liberation theology is and where it fits into American religion and culture. A little later, we'll hear from one of Cone's former students, Dwight Hopkins, who's now a theology professor.
Why'd you feel bad, Tink? Oh, I also need to give you a mini lesson for the work you did on that video. I apologize, I forgot. I wish I could highlight. This isn't text parsable, which is unfortunate. I can make a transcript of the NPR thing.
A member of Trinity Church and the editor of an anthology about the Black theology of liberation. First, we'll hear from Dr. James Cone himself. He's an ordained minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. He's a distinguished professor of systematic theology at Union Theological Seminary in Manhattan. His books include A Black Theology of Liberation, For My People, Black Theology and the Black Church, and Risks of Faith, The Emergence of a Black Theology of Liberation, 1968 to 1998. Reverend Cone, welcome to Fresh Air.
Thank you.
Since Black liberation theology is new to so many people, and it's been in the news, and since you're its primary creator, let's talk about its history. But let's start with how you would define it now.
Well, I would define Black liberation theology as mainly a theology that sees God primarily as concerned with the poor and the weak in society. And since this theology comes out of the Black community, we call it Black liberation theology. But it's not just for Black people in a narrow sense of that term. It is for Black people in the sense that it focuses on the concerns of Blacks who are living and who are voiceless in this society. That makes it Black liberation theology. But it is concerned about the gospel for everybody. And if everybody is for the gospel in this society, then they are for the poor and the weak. And if you are for the poor and the weak, you're also concerned about the liberation of Black people too. So Black theology is an
You did contribute stuff. I mean, you worked on it, and I was it's one of those things where we didn't use a lot of the clips because we had a ton of clips and we can't include them all. So it wasn't bad or anything like that. You worked on it and I watched those clips and it helped me form some opinions. So even if I didn't use it in the video, it's still useful. All right. So the first point he seems to make is there's a contradiction between Catholic preachings and I just want to make sure that I'm going to double check that.
Understanding of the gospel which sees justice for the poor as the very heart of what the Christian gospel is about and the very heart of what God is doing in this world. God is taking sides with those who are voiceless and weak, and he is empowering them to know that they were not made for slavery, not made for exploitation, but was made for freedom like everybody else in the world.
Well, when you started Black Liberation Theology in the 1960s, you were inspired, among other things, by Martin Luther King and by Malcolm X.
Yes.
Martin Luther King was a reverend. Malcolm X left the church and converted to Islam.
Right.
Talk a little bit about how they affected your theological thinking. Let's start with King.
Yeah, King gave Black theology its Christian identity. And in that sense, I'm a minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Now, Malcolm X, who was not a Christian, as you say, he gave Black theology its Black identity. And this is important, too, because we were Black before we were Christian. And in a white supremacist society like America has been, 246 years of slavery, 100 years of segregation and lynching, in a society where white domination is so powerful on the minority group and where Black has been defined as evil and as negative, then we have to turn that understanding of Black on its head and see ourselves as loving ourselves and not hating ourselves. So Black is Black self-esteem. It says, while King told us to love the enemy, which is right, I think we should love the enemy, because if you're going to be a Christian, you have to love the neighbor. But before you can love anybody, you have to love yourself. So I wanted to bring Martin and Malcolm together so we can fight for justice, as Martin King said, but love ourselves, as Malcolm X said. And as Malcolm said, the worst crime white people have created is to teach Black people to hate themselves. That's why we kill each other. We kill each other in the ghettos and etc. So who we don't love is ourselves. And so Black theology is bringing Martin and Malcolm together, teaching us.
This does give me an appreciation for, when framed this way. Obviously, James Cone is one individual, but when framed this way, it does give me a much better appreciation for why religion is so seemingly a part of, at least from my distant perspective, the Black American experience. Obviously, it is not ubiquitous, but this kind of, I didn't think about any of this. I guess I wouldn't have. I'm not religious for one, but also I don't deal with these things.
Us how to be both unapologetically Black and Christian at the same time.
When you started developing Black liberation theology, what disappointed you in the church as it was at that time in the 60s?
Well, the main thing that disappointed me about the white church is that it did not talk of the gospel in terms of Black people struggling for justice. I don't know how anybody can preach the gospel of Jesus Christ in a slave society or in a segregated society or in a society in which people are lynched unless you make that gospel stand in opposition to slavery, segregation, and lynching. And the white church did not do that. And they did not do it when King was marching either. They did not make the gospel identical with the struggle of Blacks for justice. Now, I was critical of the Black church for similar reasons, because many of the Black churches did not want to follow King. And because they saw the gospel primarily as going to heaven when I die. And the gospel is not primarily that at all. The gospel is what happens to you now in this world. And so I wanted the black churches to see that they can't preach the gospel unless they preach about justice and peace for all people. And so that was what I saw wrong with the churches, and I said so in the books that I wrote.
Were there parts of the Bible that took on a new significance for you when you started thinking about your religion as black liberation theology?
Yes, and it, especially the exodus of Israelites out of Egypt, became a central theme in my theology because it's been a central thing in black religion. And here you have salvation of an enslaved people being liberated. Actually, salvation was meant to be delivered from bondage. That's literally what salvation means in the Bible, to be delivered from bondage, to be set free. And I began to see a powerful thing. Now, I studied that in seminary, but they didn't teach it like that. They taught it in a way as though it was unrelated to the struggle for justice in the society today. But I also saw the prophets like Jeremiah, Amos, Isaiah, Hosea, Micah. All these prophets spoke for the poor. You spoke for the weak. So if you read the message of the prophets, it is a condemnation of the nation and also of the religious practices of that time for oppressing the poor. That's why Amos said, let justice roll down like waters and righteousness ever flowing stream. But also I saw in Jesus.
Sorry, Tink, I just saw that. No, I don't feel taken advantage of at all. I feel like I would have been taking advantage of you if I asked for help on a video and you provide me that help and I don't and I don't give you, the help in return that I promised. So, I feel bad because we had an agreement. So that's on me.
I began to ask, why was Jesus crucified? He was crucified because he was a rabble-rouser, because he disturbed the consciousness of a people. And he began his message with that focus. For he began by saying, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has appointed me to preach good news to the poor, to set at liberty the captives and the oppressed, and to visit those in prison. Here was a Savior who was making solidarity with the poor and the weak. And that opened my eyes to a profound and a new way of looking at what the Christian gospel was. So I saw
we both feel bad for no reason. The insert comment about there's some clever opportunity here to insert a joke about Catholic guilt. There's a clever opportunity. I'm not there with you yet. I'll have to put the pieces together for that one, Tank, but there's something here given the context that feels appropriate. Anyway, get back on topic. I'm wondering what there's this part. There's that famous quote from King about the moderate being the biggest challenge in the Jim Crow era, and I'm wondering how much of that sentiment is echoed here, given that he in this very interview says he's influenced by King and also by Malcolm X. I don't know enough
This is
about
fresh
Malcolm
air.
X.
Again by saying the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has appointed me to preach good news to the poor, to set at liberty the captives and the oppressed, and to visit those in prison. Here was a Savior who was making solidarity with the poor and the weak. And that opened my eyes to a profound and a new way of looking at what the Christian gospel was. So I saw something that my professors never taught me, but by reading the Bible in relation to black people's struggle for justice and the civil rights and black power movement, when I began to read the Bible in that light and in the light of black people's historical experience, I began to see that it makes a difference what context out of which you read the Bible. And so I began to see things I never saw before and began to feel empowered to write until like it was fire inside me.
Let's talk a little bit about the church in the community where you grew up. You grew up in a small town in Arkansas. You were born in 1938, so you were going to church probably starting or being aware of it anyways, in the 1940s in the segregated South. Describe what your church was like.
My church was that force in my life that gave so much meaning, that transcended the racial segregation that I had to endure every day. So when we black people came to church on Sunday, we experienced a reality that lets us know that we were God's children and not somebody else's maid, somebody else's janitor. See, therefore, the maids and the janitors, they were in charge at church. They were in the deacon board, on the steward board. They were the ministers and such. So church was the place that affirm your somebodyness in a society.
Yeah, it's funny to think I've also, I'm a big, I have a tremendous, the two people in school that I always found interesting were Harriet Tubman and MLK. When I did a lot of advocacy work, there was this, I never was told why, but anytime you cited Martin Luther King, people were there was a bit of an eye roll that would happen. And I never had the courage to necessarily ask why. So yeah, I can take a guess in that maybe I don't know. I'm not even gonna guess. I probably just would do some reading on why maybe MLK is in his approach, some people felt was too lukewarm, was not intense enough or whatever. I don't know why, but I really, yeah, I think I did 3 book reports on Harriet Tubman because I was like, holy shit. She went back 3 times and maybe more than that. Crazy stuff. So this is really informative as to these ideas of why this would be so precious. Precious not in the why religion and spirituality is cherished, particularly the amount of time I waste thinking about my station and how much money I make and how I feel about how much money I make. The amount of emotional energy I have, ironically, gets in the way of making money, right? This is a really powerful concept. And then to have a community around it, because you even said, let me rewind that to make sure I'm not making that up.
On the steward board, they were the ministers and such. So yeah. Church
community
was the place that affirmed your somebodyness in a society that treated you as nobodies. And that's what I discovered as a little child. I discovered that in my home too, because my mother and father were really powerful forces in my life. But I also discovered that in a segregated school because my teachers told me I could be whatever I wanted to be. So it's church, school, and home. Those were the forces in my life in Bearden that helped me to know that I am somebody. And if I can do or say anything today, I owe it to them.
Did the preacher in your church emphasize portions of the Bible that spoke to you in the way that you think Black liberation theology should speak now?
Yes, because the preachers in the church in which I grew up, they always let us know that segregation was against God's will. I don't know anybody who believed that. And when they went to church, they focused on those passages in the Bible that emphasize that. For example, they would say, in Christ there is no male or female, no slave or free. We are all one in Christ Jesus. That's Paul in Galatians. But also in Acts 17, where it says that God, out of one blood, God has created all people. Those kinds of passages and those kinds of emphases were made in order to let Black people know that we are segregated, but that's not what God intended.
I really appreciate how you're breaking this down. Makes me think differently about covering gospel heavy songs. Yeah, it brings it out of. So the reason why I was brought to tears, there's been an element of gospel music where there are certain things that I like relate to that I always felt like I couldn't talk about, but because James Cone is breaking it down, there are some things that are that are transcend race, like the Tamala Man video where I broke down in tears. I was having a bad day. And there was something about Tamala Man's performance where, a lot of music tries to talk about overcoming a hard time, but the problem is that most people who get to pursue music as a profession don't really know what a hard time is. Like, let's be real, it's generally a privileged thing to do. And so from what I've heard, he was not liked by some because he was trying to make himself out to look like Jesus. And he had to sacrifice himself for the gospel. Didn't like that. Maybe. That's I'm sure that's loaded. So I'll have to look more into like what certain advocates, what their contention with MLK is. Like, I don't want to be reductive. The whole point of this is to learn and think, but the gospel thing, like with Tamala Man, like gospel singers, at least the ones that really move me, have this way of addressing struggle and hardship, and then also having faith. And the battle of knowing a reality of hardship, but having confidence and faith that you'll overcome, so much so that you sing about it and give a service about that. Right? And I have very little faith in a lot of different things. Like, I don't have a lot of faith in a system. I don't have a lot of faith in, like, I'm not religious. So but when Tamala Man was singing about that, and this happens like a lot with gospel, where it's what gets me out of my chair. It's like, shit, I was having a bad day, or like, like my father passed, I'm going through a divorce, like it's tough. And then I listen to these gospel singers, and they're like, whether or not I'm religious, it doesn't matter, that narrative of overcoming. And obviously I don't want to get to a situation where I'm saying like James Cone represents all performances. Like, I think with this Clark Sister video, I had a friend who was like, you have to talk about race. You have to. It's disingenuous. Black dude. By the way, like not taking my advice on race from white folks. Don't worry about that. But he's a guy. He's really thoughtful. He's really smart, and so the it's tough in a video essay because even if I cite somebody, I was thinking like, oh, maybe if I use someone else's words, but my decision to cite and what to cite is not good. The only thing I can think of is to familiarize myself with these ideas over time, and then see if the artists themselves have said anything specific about it, and then let the artists speak for themselves when I'm covering the artist. If there's like an interview or there's a written word or whatever, and then I can always link to it and open up the conversation about it. I have some articles after this one, but I didn't. I like James Cone. These ideas make a lot of sense to me.
I want to thank you very much for talking with us.
Yeah, I didn't. I wasn't. That wasn't what I was getting from your statement.
James Cone is considered the father of Black liberation theology. He's a distinguished professor of systematic theology at Union Theological Seminary of the City of New York. This is Fresh Air. I'm Terry Gross. In the coverage of the controversy surrounding Barack Obama's former pastor, James Wright, you've probably heard references.
So this was the this was a criticism of the movie. I haven't read it yet. I don't know. I'm not here to like form a conclusion or to criticize this article. It's just like a take that I'm going to take in. Lifetime's most highly viewed program in 4 years is the Clark Sisters' First Ladies of Gospel, which defied TV industry expectations when its premiere last week had 2.7 million views in broadcast metrics. That's like a $30 million opening day box office. Not as big as Black Panther, a faux Afrocentric juvenile fantasy. The subject is more realistic. Oh boy. This person seems I know a lot of people who really love Black Panther. So I'm not endorsing this person's perspective. Just yes. Just taking it in. The problem is faux realism. The Clark Sisters' First Lady of Gospel intersects Black women's history with a Black gospel as part of Lifetime Network's female-centric agenda. It dramatizes how 5 women from Detroit, whose mother honed their singing and musical skills, found success in the 1980s. Director Christine Swanson and writer Camille Tucker treat the Clark Sisters like Broadway and Hollywood dream girls treated Motown's The Supreme. As templates of bootstrap ambition and women's tribulations. But the filmmakers and Lifetime don't deal with what made them exceptional, the specifics of Black American religion and the age-old struggle between sacred and secular aspirations. This is a point that I need to familiarize myself with more, because this comes up in the video in the script that I have in the outline, where they got a lot of crap for their more contemporary music. A Whitney Houston gospel influenced song. How do you even begin to approach that as an outsider? I think you quote the artist, or you suggest some readings and document your learning process. And that's it. I don't think you can speak to it. You know, I think you have to say it's there, right? Because it's the elephant in the room. So you have to say, hey, it's there. How do you cover it? I think you just go like, I learned a lot about this thing. Here's what I checked out. Or if the artist speaks about it, like the artist the Clark sisters talk about this, how they felt like they had no place, because when they brought in more contemporary music, some certain stylings like funk and stuff like that, their mother forbade them from performing at Studio 51, and then, but then they were also getting a lot of crud from ministers, so they felt really torn. And beyond that, I'd have to, like, it's not for me to say anything about that, right? I just have to kind of bring up what they said about it. So, and try to understand it as best I can. I won't be able to, but like, there's a continuum, right? Like, completely ignorant and trying your best to relate as best you can without having those experiences. So never watched it. I don't watch any movies and shows anymore because I can't tell what's going on. Cover any song as long as you can convey the message correctly. Color doesn't matter. I would say that if it depends on the song. If there's a song where it's specifically about matters of color, then I would say colors matter, right? Like, race would matter if the song is about racism inherently. I would say that inherently, if you're not capable of having that experience, that singing a song about that experience, it's not that it's like sacrosanct that you don't, as much as it's like you won't do it justice because you can't. And that's it. That's like the consequence of that. As far as that's my take on it. It's like, it's not like a bad thing to sing Dreamgirls in your bedroom or something like that. If not that I can comment on that song pertains to race. I've heard people say that back and forth, but like, yeah. Anyway. By turning the Clark sisters into victims, the biopic becomes one more saga about women oppressed by envious, authoritarian men, plus the stigma of conservative religion. You'd never know from this film, zoom out a little bit so we can see it, that matriarch Maddie Moss Clark, played by actress Joan, sorry, I'm so super French, Elise, was an esteemed, innovative choral arranger driven by religious conviction to change the style of musical gospel's powerful invocation. Driven by religious conviction to change the style of musical gospel's powerful invocation. Excuse me. Oops. I haven't seen the film, so that kind of makes this a little difficult, but like, going into it, I can watch the film and have a little bit more of an understanding of what wasn't covered. Did they deal with what made them exceptional, the specifics of Black American religion and the age-old? That's a conundrum I do not have, because I don't feel any loyalty towards opera, so I don't mind making it comedic. But you can still be saying that message from someone else's perspective. Yeah, but so the way that I think about it, Tink, is that when you have music, you have several dimensions of the song. So we're thinking of it from the singer's point of view, right? So we have the writer, the singer, origins, the singer, the execution, the delivery, and then we have the audience. The purpose, right? So a writer, oops, my thing's away. Okay. So the way that I see it is that with when you're singing music, this is all part of like the experience of music. So for us as singers, we can do our best to focus on the delivery without focusing on elements that we ourselves cannot relate to. Let's remove it from race so we can talk about the concept. Like, so the delivery, I think we can say a delivery is more impactful when it is personal. The trick in finding a good song pairing is finding how you can the singer has to ask, given the origins of this song, how, like, it's got to be a through line. So there has to be, what in my personal experience best that I can channel best honors the intent of the writer composer, right? And then we also have to ask, what about the elements of music and language, context, and origin will move the audience? So what's cool about having a really good songwriter, it's like when you do Shakespeare. Shakespeare is actually not hard to do because it's so well written, right? To be or not to be, that is the question, right? And then iambic pentameter kind of takes care of itself. To be or not to be, that is the question, right? Or that is the question. Yeah. Anyway. But the point is that when you have a song that's about something explicitly written with the explicitly written for a context that you cannot relate to, your delivery as a singer is inferior to, in its potential, than a singer who can relate to, or can accomplish the through line. So if you're singing a song about race and you're not, let's move it from race because it tends to get loaded. It's the concept. If I were to sing about being a woman, okay, so there's a song about motherhood, okay, and the author, the composer, the writer was very intent on creating a song for mothers about the experience of giving birth. And I, as a singer, went to go sing about that. Could I do it? I could imagine my dog, you know, but does that match up with the through line of the song? Am I going to sing that as good as a singer who is equally musically and technically as proficient as I am, but who was a mother? I won't do as good a job, right? It doesn't bastardize the song. I don't think. It's not like bad form. I think it's just a matter of, this is part of delivering a performance. So why wouldn't I pick a better song that matches for me, right? Like it's just one of those things. That's how I see it. I don't see it as like good or bad. I try to remove that as much as I can. It really shows the deep connection between faith, culture, survival. Makes me think about Mariah too. She's biracial. Grew up loving the Clark sisters. Yeah. Yeah, and it would be really nice, like, to have more of. There's a section where I talk more about musical elements in Act 3 of the video essay, and I talk about more like dry concepts like interpolation versus sampling. But it would be really nice to get words from Beyonce or Mariah explicitly and specifically on that matter. Yeah, I cannot imagine Zinger. Like the fact that I don't speak French, I don't feel quite French enough, but I don't have that's like just because I can't speak French at family reunions. Like it doesn't go deeper than that. So like I still enjoy the wine and cheese. Like I can participate, right? Like so it's one of those things where like if I had to sing about colorism, like I don't even know what to do with that, right? So can stand up and sing because I understand the song is so important. Sure, but I don't think that goes along with the through line of the intent of the composer, Tink. Nor does it. It depends on who your audience is as well, because that's a. I don't treat any portion of this as more or less significant. So when you have the audience, like ideally, this all lines up. I think that's what makes a powerful performance, when you have people who are there to consume a thing, and both the delivery and the writer are like, when everything is aligned, it's like that's when you really move people. And so I think it's a good idea to try and get everything aligned as best you can. But yeah, I don't think it's like evil. Can pride and gratitude substitute for a lived experience when it comes to singing something came from Faith Under Fire? I don't think it substitutes it. I don't think it's as effective. I can substitute black pepper with chocolate, but I don't know if I want to eat that. It's a little bit of a ridiculous metaphor, but I think the point remains, like, if that makes sense. Sure. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that, Tink, but one, I haven't. But let's say hypothetically I did see my wife give birth. I still think that's not going to be as effective. And that's my main point, is that it's not that I can't do it. You know what I mean? It's not that I can't go through that. This is like why actors are often typecast. Like, can I play an old man? Can I do that as a not old man? Yes, I can play that, and have, by the way. And it was comical, and the audience really liked it. It was slapstick. Would the role have been done better by someone who is an older man? Yeah. And also as good an actor, right? If all things are equal, if someone has more personal attachment to it, it's like work done. You know what I mean? It's like respecting work that is done versus not done, and experience in general. If you think about it just strictly, because this is the lane that I have to establish. I have to establish the lane in terms of this is a channel about singing. and teaching singing. I am not equipped to talk about race. What I can say is this, is that there's a reason why people say write what you know. It's not that you can't write shit you don't know. It's that when you do, it's more you. And it's like you have an opportunity as an artist. Nowadays, it's much easier to get in front of people. But for me, it's like, you know, even if I sang, when I go live, no one really tunes in to hear me sing, and I could fix that, and there are strategies and marketing strategies and things I can do. But let's say that I work really hard to do a performance, to set up a performance. I'm going to choose musical repertoire that best expresses me, and doing that while also seeing that the writer wrote for me, and to make sure that the audience that I'm welcoming in is also where I'm at. Because when those things align, it's just so much better. The quality is so much better. So yeah, it's like Pavarotti singing punk music. Can he do it? Sure. That's obviously an absurd extreme, right? But that's more my point. I don't like the framing of good and bad. I like the framing of what do you want to accomplish, and what's the effective way to do that as a singer. I try to take my judgment out of artistic intent and the craft, and just try to think of cause and effect as much as I can. And so when we're talking about singing music, I think that this is how I think about it, if that makes sense. So that's my stance on it. Yeah. But religion and the age-old struggle between sacred. Now I'm thinking about this so hard, because I'm like, I'm not totally satisfied. Like, this is not bad, this way of thinking about it, but there's stuff that's missing from this. But this is useful. Like, I actually think this is like, this is why it's great to like learn and think. Because I was gonna do like shorts. I was gonna make a series on like jokingly, like, how am I gonna go viral on TikTok as an opera singer? How long does it take a pro singer? I was gonna do that as a joke. And now I'm like, I didn't put any of this effort into that. And I kind of instinctively had this feeling like that video series was going to bomb and be stupid, because I had not put in the work of this. It's like, I haven't done a good job of picking the music. I haven't done a good job of picking the audience, and I haven't done a good job of picking what I care about and what I can best represent. Anyway, just like a short aside. There's value in this sort of thing, but this is not. I am going to obsess over this a little too much. Anyway. Yeah, stand-up is great. And you can do it from the perspective of Hamlet. I think that might be an audience thing and a writer thing as well. It's like, if an audience goes to see Cynthia Erivo do stand-up, and they want those parallels that address race specifically, and that's what the audience wants, already your delivery as a singer, if you don't have that intimate experience with race, is going to fall short of the audience expectation and their emotional state. You're not going to connect with that audience. And we run the risk oftentimes as artists thinking to ourselves naively, well, if it's just good enough, like, no, like that's not a good realistic, like, are there exceptions to the rule? 100%. This is a theory. This is an idea. It is not, there's nothing about this that's like fucking law, right? But the trap that we get into as artists, and this happens all the time. This happens to Eric Clapton with Derek and the Dominoes when he didn't want to put his name behind Layla. Like, Layla, the album, was bombing. Derek and the Dominoes You know, Layla, you caught me on my knees. Like massive song, made him so much money, so successful, so meaningful to so many people, was bombing. This is in his biography, because Eric Clapton's like, I just wanted the music to be carried commercially on its own merits. No, like, we can't fix shit by just being good enough, right? Like, more often than not, like overwhelmingly that is the case. Like I said, this isn't law or anything like that, but like just being an exceptional singer, picking a topic matter to cover that doesn't line up with the writer's intent or the audience is likely to it's likely to create an inferior performance. Overwhelmingly, in my experience. This is what I've seen time and time again from trying to do performances that mean something to people. Like, graduating from this perspective is really, really, really important if you want to be a professional. It's not just about your delivery and your execution. There are other considerations. And this is not a complete idea. I have to think more on this. It's a good idea. It's a good start. But that's me trying to answer your question, Tank. It's a good question, I think, and I don't often like the answer that's supplied. Because like there's nothing physically stopping you from singing about stuff that you don't have a rich personal experience with, that doesn't like perfectly, like there's nothing stopping you with it. But there is a reason to not, if that makes sense. And I don't think it's like a moral thing. I don't think it's a moral failing for me to sing Dreamgirls. I think it'd be kind of funny in a self-deprecating kind of way, because I don't think I could deliver that just on pure skill set, like remove topic matter and all that shit. I don't think I could deliver that, but I think it would fall flat. And I'm tired of wasting my time as an artist as well. Like, I do have something to say. I am skilled. I have my own experiences that do mean something to somebody somewhere. And it is in distilling that and really spending time with that I define me as an artist. And so I feel like if I go and try to adapt myself to things that don't fit in this, I'm kind of wasting my time. I hope that makes sense. Anyway. I'll make a video about it, like outside of the context of race, because I think that it gets loaded to a point where sometimes it can be difficult to see the idea. But there's a way to use this idea for like market research, while also trying to balance and combine market research with also the artistic side and the execution side and yada yada yada, right? So I just want to continue reading this before I have to get back to work, because I'm kind of sneaking this in. I'm at work, y'all. I work from home, but like I'm on my dinner break. So luckily I covered this portion. The matriarch and Maddie Marcus Clark's contribution I cover in the first portion. Like, that's like a big part of the video essay. Do you know the Southwest Michigan State Choir made popular through Savoy label albums that preserved the spiritual thrust of sanctified music like no other gospel recordings, a power and vibrancy unmatched by such mainstream gospel icons as the Staple Sisters, the Staple Singers, who won acclaim as offshoots of secular folk music. Melissa's casting presents a dark-skinned Oprah Winfrey archetype, which, I mean, this is over my head. That's the implications of what this is, which overlooks the thorny phenomena of light-complexioned strivers in favor of fashionable misandry, the hardships of a woman living a sexless life out of bitterness, celibacy being unthinkable. Nothing here matches the gospel documentary Say Amen Somebody, in which singer Deloise Barrett and her husband peaceably compromise on their competing ministries. Yeah, this is above my head. It's still a good thing to do on, but this is worth pausing because I need to actually like look at what she's citing and like read on like, okay, colorism and Oprah Winfrey, okay, and then like this is written speaking of audience, right? Testing. There we go. All right. Vastly inferior audio, but yeah. Sorry about that. My audio PC, or it's a Mac. I run through a laptop. I run Reaper out to my main PC, and that died just in time for me to start working again. But let me get to what y'all said before this happened. But this is something like I need to pick up again after a bit more preparing. Like, I probably need to watch the movie for one, but then also I need to look more at like Oprah's Winfrey here. There's just a lot of. There's also like a lot of hardship specific to religion that she's talking about here. Like, that seems important to like understand and navigate from her perspective, to understand this writer. But this is like a good example of like writer's intent. I'm not matching up with it as an audience, as a consumer of it. So I need to, you know. Yeah, I get you, Tank. Yeah. But I think that just means like you have a lot to say as an artist. It's just about, it's always about picking the right thing. Yeah. Anyway, all right. I gotta get back to work. Okay, I was just like, I snuck this live stream in. So at a friend's request that I do the appropriate work on addressing some of these considerations. But it already was tremendously value add. This notepad idea answers a lot of questions I was having about like how to approach making music like myself. Anyway, all right, toodles. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. We'll be doing this pretty regularly, especially whenever we cover gospel music. It's just a good practice. Like, you know, I'll know more about the Clark sisters for the Clark sister video because of this. So, all right, peace.